Hello, welcome everybody. I can see you are all starting to join the session, so we just want to say a big hello to all of you from around the world. It's fantastic to have you joining us on this special Disability Innovation live webinar. This webinar is part of the Opportunity of a Billion series, and it's a really unique space for us to showcase some of the activity that we've been working alongside some fantastic partners on around the Assistive Tech Impact Fund. So the webinar today is all around assistive technology and investment. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of housekeeping to get us started. Captioning is available for the session today, and to access that you have to push a closed caption button on the bottom of the screen, and there'll also be a link that comes around as well in case there's another option to access that. The chat functionality on the webinar is going to be turned off just to stop screen readers reading through the sessions and the text that's coming. So we're asking all the questions to come through the Q&A box, and that will enable us to answer them through the session, and then we'll also come back to them at the end as well. So please do, if you've got any questions for any of the fantastic speakers we've got today or any of the ventures, do pop them in there, and we'll try and come to them as we go through the session and then again at the end. The session will be recorded, and we'll be able to share it with you afterwards alongside a transcript of the session itself, and we also have international sign language available today. So just a little bit around our Disability Innovation Live webinar series. So it's the Global Disability Innovations Hub monthly webinar series, and we use this as an opportunity to really share our knowledge and our experiences in disability innovation. And that's everything from the stories behind the innovation to really hearing from the people behind the products. And that's what a lot of today is going to be, an opportunity just to hear some of those development stories of how some of these amazing ventures and innovative AT is being taken up to market in quite unique and different ways. And the idea is also a really informal space for ideas and reflection. So it's fantastic just to hear, I guess, from the horse's mouth and find out a little bit more what's going on behind the scenes, both at the Global Disability Innovation Hub, but also more widely across some of our projects and programs and some of the amazing partners, ventures and friends that you'll hear from today. And it's also really a great space for us to hear from you all that are joining today, your feedback, your ideas, topics and things you'd be interested in engaging with us in the future as well. So coming up today, and I'll let all the speakers introduce themselves as they take part in their individual sections. But we have speakers from a variety of different organisations, the GDI Hub, Brink, who are one of the leading kind of partners in the Assistive Tech Impact Fund project, and some of our fantastic ventures that we've been working with for many months now, hearing about where they're up to in the development of their individual products. And we'll also be hearing from Anne from the SCDO and Louisa, who has been leading on some of the research that works alongside this fantastic kind of innovation fund as well. So I'll now hand across to my colleague Kathy. I'll leave Kathy to introduce herself and tell you a little bit more around this space and the work that we've been doing in it.
Thanks, Louise. I hope everyone can hear me. It's great to be here. I'm not sure if my camera is actually working, but in any case, I wanted to give you a quick overview of what assistive technology is and why it's important to people. So assistive technology is any product that helps a person with a disability or a disabled person to overcome a functional limitation which causes their disability. The assistive technology is not just the product though, it's also the service. So there's no point in just giving out a technology like a wheelchair or a hearing aid unless you're able to train people in how to use that, and not only train people in how to use it, but also be around to repair and help people progress. They might need a different wheelchair in a year or two's time, or they might need a better or a worse, their condition may get better or worse, and therefore their needs will change. So assistive technology is important to people. If you're unable to walk using your legs, then obviously a wheelchair gets you from A to B. If you're unable to hear, then a hearing aid enables you to hear. So it unlocks people's potential. It allows people to go to school, to get an education, to get a livelihood, to engage in social activities, sport activities, arts activities, and generally just be a part of society. Not enabling that has huge costs to society. First of all, people's human rights are violated, which should make us all want to do something better. But secondly, the economy is impacted. The purple pound is known to be a great driver of financial growth within sectors. Inclusive innovation is known to be a great driver. We know, for example, thanks to AtScale, the global partnership on assistive technology, that for every dollar invested in assistive technology provision, $9 is returned. That's simply looking at a cost-benefit analysis. Further research that we're doing through AT 2030 shows that figure is even higher. If you begin to look at the downstream effects of investing in assistive technology, you begin to not just have the 1 in 9, but an additional 1 in 11 multiplier. So we should be investing in assistive technology, but it's difficult. Each product has a bit of a fragmented market, and in low and middle income countries, you're of course fighting against other pressing issues that governments have to concentrate on. And so it's important that people understand the value and the benefits to people. It's also important that people begin to think about new ways of financing assistive technology and providing assistive technology to people. And this is where the Assistive Technology Impact Fund comes in. Go to the next slide, please. AT 2030, so the Assistive Technology Impact Fund is a part of the AT 2030 programme, which is funded by UK Aid. It's a £20 million investment to test what works in getting assistive technology to people globally. And what we know is that getting assistive technology to people globally is a complex problem. And so therefore we are building on multiple areas in order to accelerate growth in the sector. We work sometimes with governments to do country capacity assessments and understand the systems need within countries. At other times, we are working with the WHO and UNICEF to try and build specifications, for example, for products so that countries know a minimum specification of all of the products and can therefore begin to scale their provision and production. So within AT 2030, we are trying to build and share evidence to drive solutions. I had a quick look down the attendee list, and there are some people that I haven't met before, so that's lovely. But there are a number of familiar faces who have happened to help with some elements of assistive of AT 2030. You've helped us with research, you've helped us with innovation, and there are increasingly a number of investors into this space. When I speak to investors, they're increasingly interested in how we accelerate local solutions. Governments are interested in this. Society is interested in it because it helps build a circular and more resilient economy, but it also helps build a better provision service for end users. So we're looking at those things and we're helping to facilitate ecosystems, not just through the AT Impacts Fund, but also, for example, we fund the first and only assistive technology accelerator in Nairobi, Kenya, Innovate Now, with our partners AMREF. And so this today is a bit of a celebration of how far we've come in the sector as a whole. And I hope that you'll enjoy the rest of the session. I'll hand it back to Louise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. That was really great just to hear a bit of an overview, and I guess just get everyone up to speed on the sector and where it's up to, and I guess the kind of the why. And the next bit is really looking at the how, and I think that's just to do with kind of how we work with our partners and the excitement of this project that we're here to present today. So I'll hand across to Lee, who will give you a little bit more information around the AT Impact Fund.
Wonderful. Thank you, Louise, and huge thanks to Kathy and everyone in attendance. I would like to echo Kathy's comments that it's so wonderful to see some familiar names in attendance and some familiar faces and amongst this group. Thank you all for your ongoing support. As Kathy said, this is a bit of a celebration, and it's a delight to be able to share with you everything that we've learned over the past few months working together on specifically the AT Impact Fund. So there's a reason that this series of events is called the Opportunity of a Billion, and it's because there are currently 1 billion unmet needs or potential users of assistive technology whose needs are currently unmet globally. And really, we set out together to think about the role of impact finance and grant financing to support in changing that picture, in shaping the sector. And we've really been doing that by supporting a range of what we believe are the most promising AT ventures across Africa, who you're going to hear from today. Our thesis was that grant capital alone wasn't going to move the dial for these innovators, and that we needed to combine some grant capital with some expert-led venture building and what we call the Scale Studio. So a range of support to help the folks that you're going to meet today to really kind of step change their operations and scale across Africa. This is truly a partnership that we've developed. It's a partnership of experts, academics, venture builders, and that grant capital. And we've really been working hard and hustling for the past 6 months to see ways and to experiment with ways that we could help these pioneers scale their operations. Just a quick word on scale, because we're going to be talking about this quite a lot. We were very, very intentional about the way that we set out to define scale as part of this project. And so everyone that you're going to meet today is looking at scale, but looking at it in the most enduring and sustainable way. We know that there are many people across the continent and in other places, especially in low middle income countries and contexts, who are scaling by buying cheap, piling high, and creating a profitable enterprise as a result. We're not interested in that. We're interested in the folks who are really building the ecosystem, who are really thinking about who's going to pay for this when it breaks, who's going to pay for this product, who's going to repair it when it breaks, how is it going to reach people, how are people going to know that it exists in the first place, and those who are working across the kind of full breadth of the challenge. And creating new economies, service economies, and other things to endure a proper and sustainable scale in the sector. So the people that you're about to meet today are really what we believe are the kind of creme de la creme of what's out there. And we've been blown away by the progress that they've made over the past 6 months working with us. And we really, really hope that you are too. So Louise, I'll hand back to you and you can talk about, you can introduce the 5 ventures.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Lee. It's great just to kind of get that overview of the program and the kind of exciting ventures that we're going to be hearing from next. And I guess I think it's also worth just mentioning that kind of one of the really unique elements of this project and a lot of the work that we've done around this space is really pulling on the expertise and the experience and the knowledge from the GDI Hub and Brink and the Catalyst Fund and some of the other founding partners that have enabled us to really, I guess, kind of catapult this work from an idea and something that is really quite new and innovative within the space to something that we can really trial on the ground. And it feels like we're at a very exciting point now where we're ready to fly. We're really ready to hear from these ventures in terms of individually where their products are at and what they've been working on up until now, and then what the next stage is, and how through all our joint partnerships, our reach, our networks, and some of the fantastic research that's gone alongside, actually as a whole, we're able to really achieve something bigger than some of the individual parts. And I think that's what's really exciting about this project is that we're at the starting point, and where it goes next is going to be really interesting for us all to watch. So let's start from the starting point and let's hear from some of the ventures and find out a little bit around their individual Atif products and what they've been up to over the past 6 months or so. Perfect. So we're going to start with Wazi. So I will hand across to Wazi, and I'll leave Wazi to introduce themselves and their individual products and tell us a little bit more about what they do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Louise. It's really lovely to meet everybody today. Hello, everyone. My name is Brenda Katwesije. I am the co-founder and CEO of Wazi in Uganda. And I would like to recognize my co-founder, Georgette, who is also on this call. So Wazi, as a company, designs, manufactures, and through its partners, distributes eyewear in East Africa. We are actually the first made in Africa prescription eyewear in sub-Saharan Africa, outside of South Africa. So just yesterday, I spoke to a friend from Zambia who told me about her 12-year-old sister who had just got eyeglasses for the first time. And this was the first time that her sister actually saw the texture of a leaf. That's something that I used to take for granted, actually. So what I found out actually through this conversation was that her sister, her pair of eyeglasses had cost her about $180. And even though the quality was okay, the price was not. And this is a problem that is pervasive across many countries on the continent. And Wazi wants to tackle that problem country by country, starting in Uganda. The costs of eyewear, actually, exacerbated by the high cost of importation. In Uganda, it's about 50% in tax on a pair of eyeglasses, prescription eyeglasses, and supply chain disruptions that have happened over the last couple of years due to COVID-19 have actually not made things any better. The good or average quality eyewear is often expensive. And when you look at the context of countries like Uganda, where the average annual household income can be as low as $300, that can be a steep price point for most people. And yet, cheaper alternatives that have been marketed are often of low quality and usually do more harm than good, and often leave patients with no dignity of choice. The other issue that we see in the eye care space is that eyewear is actually not made for African facial features. So most companies don't have the African face in mind, and most glasses are usually made for European or Asian faces. So as a result, the weight is distributed onto African faces differently, and this hurts the overall well-being of patients. And so between 2019 and 2020, over 3 million eyeglasses were imported into Uganda. We want to be a better alternative, not just in Uganda, but for over 500 million people in Africa that are in need of eyeglasses. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about Wazi on the next slide, please. Thank you. Wazi is the first prescription eyewear brand that is designed, created, and manufactured and distributed in East Africa. Our pride really is that we are that middle ground between quality, using the best materials, and cost. So we give people an alternative to both high or average quality eyeglasses that are very expensive and low quality eyeglasses that are cheap in the sense of the word cheap. However, we are also working with a host of local artists that are highlighting their African ingenuity and creativity to bring these glasses to life. We are working hand in hand with them, over 120 of them, to speak the language of Africa and to also take into consideration the African facial features. We are creating an inclusive line of eyewear that can be worn comfortably by people in Africa and people with African facial features. So we are giving people diversity and dignity of choice, because we have a lot of designs, but we also have designs that are considerate of price, of quality, but also of how people feel. Eyeglasses are not just a health accessory. They are also a fashion accessory in a way. So when people want to look good, people want to feel good every time that they wear a pair of glasses. Next slide. Yeah, so I'm just really excited to share with you the progress that we have made today ever since we started working with the Atif Impact Fund in February of this year. So it's been about 9 months since we started working together, and so much has changed. Literally, when we met, we were just like a baby trying to crawl, and now we are ready to run, we are ready to scale, and we are so excited. We have pivoted our manufacturing process. Previously, we had a manufacturing process that was not efficient. It was costing us about $5,000 to just come up with one design, one size. Now we can create a new design just like that in a couple of hours, and it's off the manufacturing chain. So we are just so excited because this has increased efficiency, and overall it's enabling us to create more designs and work better with the people that design these glasses. Overall, we're giving customers better value. We are also, we've worked on a distributor-led strategy that Atif and the venture building team has helped us craft. And this is at the center of our path to scale. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that shortly. We also pride ourselves in the unique designs that have been created by over the 120 African artists that are telling stories of Uganda, of Nigeria, of Kenya through the eyeglasses that we are going to launch shortly. Also, our glasses are inclusive. So before they were not nearly inclusive enough. We had basic designs that were generic, and they weren't really considering the features of the African nose. And through the learnings with Atif Impact Fund, we have found that there's unique value in delivering that to customers. And also, it goes without saying that our team has grown from a very small team to we have 5 new people. So our team is now 7 people, and we worked with over 12 venture builders in the first 6 months of our engagement with AT Impact Fund. And this has given us support across all the different areas of our business, which would not have been possible without the AT Impact Fund. And because of that, we have created a new positioning for our brand. We can now be recognized in the market as a leader when it comes to inclusivity, as a leader when it comes to actually locally producing something that was not done before. Next slide. Yeah, so I've already spoken about some of the achievements we have had, the key highlights, but the thing that I would like to speak the most about is our distribution strategy, right? So we have spoken to a couple of distributors across the country, one of which is actually a telemedicine company, which sees over 1,000 patients per day. We also think that these distributors are key to how we get to more customers. Alone, we can't really do much, but with them, we can do a lot. So we have 3 new distributor partnerships with 10 in the pipeline, and across the country, they have over 15 outlets. And we plan to replicate that across the country and eventually across Africa. I've already mentioned that we have new team members, but what that helps us is that we are able to not only create a new way to produce these glasses, but also the team is helping us to go to market. So our hires have been very critical, and they have been very, very intentional on where we want to go. The next slide. Yeah, so in order for us to grow, we identified early on this year, working with the AT Impact Fund, that 2 major things needed to change. The first thing was how we produce, and the second thing was how we get our products to customers. So that is exactly why we set up a new production facility in Kampala. COVID-19 lockdowns notwithstanding, we had quite a number of those in Uganda earlier this year. But this was made possible by key learnings that we had from a lot of people. For instance, we have a friendly collaborator in Qubits in the UK, as well as ID Conception in France. So technology transfer like that has been key in enabling our appreciation of the new production technology that we are actually piloting in Uganda. We also hired new people, and now we have 1,000 pieces in inventory that will be launched to market within the next 10 days. So over the last few months, we have been very intentional about creating partnerships with distributors that will help us reach more people than we would have reached by ourselves. So far, there are 3 partnerships, as I mentioned, and 10 in the pipeline. And we anticipate that all these in total will help us reach over 100,000 customers. So partnerships are at the core of how we hope to scale, because there's so much work to do, and most of this we can't do in isolation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brenda. That was absolutely fascinating. Wow, you've been busy. There's so much there, and just really exciting to hear, the scale of the opportunity in the market. That the numbers imported in terms of eyewear currently was astounding. I wasn't expecting that, but also looking at just some of those, some of the progress that you've made, particularly around the kind of manufacturing and distribution. Obviously incredible and really interesting to see how that enables that scaling and as we kind of move forward into those next steps. And I think also I really kind of was quite fascinated personally around kind of the focus on design and kind of creating a product that there's a real demand for and people really love and people really enjoy and kind of get a real pleasure from using and kind of having in their lives. So I think it's a really interesting approach and a fantastic opportunity to really kind of take assistive technology and make it part of everyone's everyday life and make it a real pleasure and an enjoyable experience for people to be able to kind of engage with the product as well. So fantastic to hear about that, Brenda. I'm sure we'll have some more questions for you all later on. So we'll now move across to our second venture and we'll be hearing from Miracle Feet. So I'll hand across to Miracle Feet directly for them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about the work that they've been doing.
Thank you so much, and I'm assuming everyone can hear me. I'm Cheska Colorado Mansfeld. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Miracle Feet, and I'm joined by Daphne Sorensen, who is our president, and I'll be speaking first and then she'll talk a little at the end. First, thank you so much for this incredible opportunity and also for the amazing support that we've been getting from Atif. It's so exciting to see the energy, the interest, and the momentum around assistive technology. When we first started Miracle Feet 11 years ago, we felt like we were completely on our own, and it really does feel like there's a community now, all motivated and energized to work on this together. So it's just tremendously exciting. So thank you for all of that. Very quickly, what is the issue that Miracle Feet is tackling? So we work on the issue of clubfoot. Clubfoot is a very common birth difference, and it actually affects 1 in every 800 children born worldwide. That's a lot of children. Because 85% of those children live in locations where it's difficult to access treatment, clubfoot is one of the largest causes of physical disability in the world. And if it's left untreated, clubfoot severely impacts people's mobility, making it very difficult for them to walk easily and without pain. Yet, it's very treatable. So clubfoot is highly treatable with a very inexpensive and effective treatment that doesn't even involve any major surgery, that takes about 2 to 3 months to complete and works in 95% of cases. This treatment is routinely available in wealthy countries. And so, you know, it's perfectly possible for us to tackle clubfoot and end this as a cause of disability. The treatment, part of the treatment, and you can see on the slide here, there is a purple brace. This is the assistive technology part of treatment, and it's used once the correction is completed, but it's absolutely an essential part of treatment, and children are not fully treated unless they have access to this brace. It's worn only at night, so it doesn't affect children's ability to learn to crawl and to walk and to play with friends or go to preschool. But it's a very, very critical piece of treatment. And so what Miracle Feet was created to do is to scale this treatment around the world. And most of that work so far has been focused on the lowest income countries and reaching the lowest income populations in those countries. And we've done that by working with government hospitals. We train doctors and physical therapists. We establish referral pathways so that children are identified and get to treatment at an early age. We raise awareness and destigmatize disability so that people access care. And very importantly, we work with governments to put in place guidelines and policies to support clubfoot treatment and to make sure that it gets mainstreamed into the health services that they're providing. Under this model, we have given away the brace. And we've done that because it's been the easiest thing to do and because we are really working with very, very low income families. And through this model so far, we've been able to treat our partners, our local partners in all of these countries have been able to treat 61,000 children. They've been enrolled in treatment in 300 clinics in 29 different countries around the world. So that's what we've been able to do so far before Atif. And if we could have the next slide, please. What we're trying to do with the Atif project is actually explore a new way of working and providing treatment, and a model that will work to reach middle income populations in middle income countries and in lower income countries where there is a growing middle class. What the project is enabling us to do is to sell the brace to families that can afford it. And just a little bit about this brace, the brace is a small part of Miracle Feet. We found ourselves in a position where we had to develop this piece of assistive technology because as we were trying to scale treatment, this just wasn't available. There were very inadequate options available, very expensive braces imported from the US or or locally made in little workshops around the corner from hospitals, and it was very hard to scale that, and the quality was really variable and it was very difficult to manage. So we ended up developing a brace because we really, really needed it. So we didn't develop it to sell, we developed it because we saw this desperate need, and we can produce this brace for $20. The regular ones used in the UK or the US cost anything between about $350 and $1,600. So a very, very dramatic price reduction. But we designed it with 3 things in mind. We wanted it to be mass producible so that we had consistent quality and could very quickly provide inventory wherever we were working. It needed to have all the functionality that the wealthy country braces, for a better use of the name, had. So like clip-on shoes, so it's really easy for parents to use it. And we wanted it to be attractive. And Brenda just spoke so eloquently about the importance of eyewear and how design is so important. And we also believe that that's true. If you have to put a brace on your child every night for 4 years, you want that to be something that gives you some joy and doesn't feel like too much like a medical device. If you could go to the next slide, please. That would be great. So this project is really important to Miracle Feet for a number of reasons. One is that it's just so clear that there's an enormous gap in the market. It's very difficult for a doctor who wants to treat clubfoot well to find braces for his or her patients. And the brace that we designed, fortunately, fills that gap in that it's very affordable at the $20 price point. That's what it costs us to produce. And it's very high quality. So parents and providers love it. And so we want to make sure that it's available even where we're not working or for families that aren't seeking care through government hospitals. We also recognize that clubfoot is still not well addressed in middle income countries. We hear a lot of stories of the frustrations of families who go to private hospitals and then find that they don't get good treatment, or that braces aren't available at the end of the casting phase of treatment. So there's a real need for our work or for somebody's work to address clubfoot in middle income countries. But we also believe that it shouldn't be costing us as much as it's costing us in low income countries. That there's more ability for families to contribute to care, and for governments and the health system to support treatment. So we're looking for how do we refine our model for a middle income market, and selling the brace is sort of a very key part of that. So that's why this project is so important to us. And then finally, the hope is that this will generate some revenue and make Miracle Feet a little less reliant on charitable grants and so forth. And hopefully will also make us more attractive to other kinds of funders as we move forward. So those are the reasons why we care so much about this. We, like Wazi, have made extraordinary progress and are so grateful to the technical support that we've received from Brink and from Catalyst in doing this. We couldn't have done it alone. The project is in Nigeria. And very quickly, we established that it didn't make sense for us to be trying to sell directly to consumers, to the patients, that we had to go through doctors. So that was a key finding early on. And that led us to find 3 locations where we could pilot selling the brace: 2 public hospitals, and then recently OADCPH, which is another grantee of Atif, which is exciting. They're all very enthusiastic, and they, like us, see the need. They have confirmed all of those findings. The feedback on the brace has been extremely positive, both from the families that have seen it and from providers. They're very excited about being able to access this brace. And then we have developed a financial model with support from Catalyst that we are now starting to use as we explore other commercial opportunities outside Nigeria, with Ecuador being one of those. So we really feel like over the last few months, we've not just learned about the brace, but we've really sort of got deepened our understanding of how we're going to tackle middle income countries. So what comes next is that we're going to complete these pilots, and the hope is that we're going to get a lot of feedback on what kind of price point is manageable for people, and how do the doctors sell the brace? So not necessarily actually sell it, but how do they persuade families to use it, and does it help with compliance? Another challenge is getting the braces to OADCPH. In Togo, we have already gotten them into Nigeria, and that's been fine, and starting to see whether a regional approach might actually make more sense. And then deciding sort of where do we take this next? And the hope is that we can continue to do the work in Nigeria, but also really explore some other locations where this project might be relevant. So next slide, please. And I'm going to hand over now to Daphne to finish us up with the key learnings.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks. What a great opportunity to be here. So this is a slide really about our key learnings. But as you can see, the key learnings on the slide, I won't read them off. Instead, I'd like to home in and expand on the second bullet about the need for more government guidelines to drive AT demand. Simply put, commercialization of clubfoot braces doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it can't be done piecemeal. Because the brace is part of an entire yet specific treatment for clubfoot, the demand for braces will only happen if or when there's an enabling environment that promotes this approach. In Nigeria and other countries with similar characteristics, we need government to, among other things, raise awareness of clubfoot, set national treatment guidelines, and integrate clubfoot treatment as part of the national training curriculum of healthcare professionals. Now, as obvious as this sounds, more braces alone don't solve the problem of untreated clubfoot in Nigeria. The good news is that we're confident that any additional investment in Nigeria that takes into account the important task of developing an enabling environment will ultimately be successful. After all, there are approximately 10,000 children born with clubfoot each year in Nigeria without fail. That so many of them are falling through the cracks when we know what it takes to treat them is a problem we can solve. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Daphne and Cheska. That was really fascinating to hear, really kind of going back to square one, how the device was kind of initially developed, what motivated you to do that, how you could see that huge gap in the market for AT that could be produced at such a significantly kind of lower cost, with opportunities to kind of really scale. And I think, as you kind of described, and similar, I guess, to Wazi, the size of the market and the opportunity here is so great. And yet there's also a lot of other factors involved as well. And I know we've had a couple of questions come in that have actually come in to us directly as panelists from the audience members, asking a little bit around what are some of the barriers and things like import taxes. And I think that also then comes down to some of the elements that you've pulled on there around the wider environment, and why a project such as Atif is so important, because actually there's different sections to it, and part of that is around kind of developing individual AT. Part of it is about kind of building a wider environment and ecosystems for the development of AT products, but also looking at the much bigger scale as well, in terms of what do we need to do to really take on board the opportunity that is available, and how we can have different approaches to funding and to kind of development of AT to scale up and take advantage of those opportunities and really get the products to the people that so desperately need them. And we can see by the numbers that's been presented already so far that is really quite a challenge, but also a huge space that is kind of primed to be taken, and for us all to kind of look and see what the future holds. So fantastic, thank you so much for that. I shall now pass on to our next venture. So we are going to be hearing from Hirx. So I'll hand across to you, Hirx, and look forward to hearing about your journey.
Hi everyone, it's lovely to be with you, and thank you to the team at ATIF for the opportunity to share some of our learnings, and what a great couple of months it's been. I must say it's been so inspiring to also hear from the others. Very, very exciting times that we're in. So I'm Tasha de Kock. I'm an audiologist and the project lead at the Hirx Group. And today I'll share a little bit with you about our journey. So Hirx is a disruptive medtech scale-up company that has the vision and mission to develop and implement and scale sustainable hearing services using digital technologies that anyone can use everywhere, anywhere. And this has really been our strive over the past couple of years. And at the moment with ATIF, we are trying to see how we can take this even one step further. To date, our technology has reached more than 1.5 million people, and it's also been used, our clinical solutions, in more than 86 countries worldwide already. But still, to this day, the need just remains huge in terms of hearing health. And the WHO released earlier this year the World Report on Hearing that shows us that 1.5 billion people currently is experiencing some degree of hearing loss. And unfortunately, we know that more than 80% of these people live in low and middle income countries where the access to services are really, really low, close to non-existent or very low. If we take Africa as an example, we know that there's only one audiologist for every 1 million people on the continent. So I don't even have to say more to explain the need when it comes to hearing health. So if we move on to the next slide, I'll show you what we've been trying to do in this ATIF project. We have been working on creating an innovative and sustainable access to end-to-end hearing health services in low and middle income communities. And I'll explain a little bit more. So up to recently, our Hirx technology focused on the screening component or the detection component in the hearing health journey, as well as the diagnostic component of the hearing health journey. But we realized the need in low and middle income context to be able to offer an end-to-end hearing health care model. And you'll see there that the model that we wanted to work on and explore together with ATIF has 5 steps to it. So firstly, we know we need detection of hearing loss, first for the person to become aware of that. Then we need to diagnose it. And then we wanted to add in an extra step in this model, because we know that awareness is so low in these contexts. If you've never heard of a hearing test or hearing aids, that you often don't even know what it can do for you, that we can create that desire to address it. So we wanted to build in a step into our model where we can give somebody the opportunity to have a demonstration of what amplification can do for them. Then in the treatment component, we wanted to look at innovative financing options and how we could make that accessible and sustainable. And then finally, to also innovate in the space of support, because we often know that even if somebody gets a hearing aid, it often ends up in the drawer, because we know how important that first 6 weeks after the fitting is, and to really be able to adapt to the new technology. It's not just a get it and all of a sudden everything is fine. It's really an adaptation process. And so there we also wanted to innovate in a contextually appropriate support method. And I'll tell you about that a little bit in the next slide. So during the last 9 months, we have worked in 2 phases to firstly build evidence for this model. So for some of the components, we had a lot of evidence that we've already researched and clinically proven, but we wanted to make sure we also fill in the gaps. And we started off with a pilot period in South Africa to test some of those other components where we could be close. And importantly, we wanted to see if it was possible to actually facilitate all 5 of these steps through the help of community health workers or non-professionals that's guided through the technology and through the audiology realm. So importantly, first, we wanted to look, for instance, what effect that demonstration, the addition of the demonstration would have. And we wanted to also test out the fitting of hearing technology in the home together with the support program. And our learnings has been great. We saw that it was extremely special for people to have an opportunity to just experience hearing technology. So after the test, we would give them an opportunity we would program the hearing aids according to their need, and then give them an opportunity to just hear how it sounds. And I must say, personally, those feedback and just seeing the people's faces was truly special. And the one woman, for instance, after fitting it, just said, it's as if I can see for the first time in my life. So that really showed us that it's wonderful to be able to give that a demonstration of what benefit they could get to them, and how that could also facilitate buy-in into the process. Then we also saw that it's definitely possible for a non-professional to facilitate this process from end to end, so from detection to support. And then lastly, we had great learnings with the support program, where we actually developed a mHealth supported support program that we facilitated via WhatsApp, and we could send them a message every day for the first 6 weeks that had a little picture to give them that day's tip of the day, together with the text in writing. And then we also sent it via a voice note, and the feedback on that was fantastic. We also made sure that we test all of this. And especially something that I can mention is we used the international outcomes inventory for hearing aids before fitting them, 6 weeks after the fitting, and again repeated that 6 months later. And I'm very happy to report that the findings showed a significant increase pre and 6 weeks post, but also the participants maintained their score 6 months post fitting. So very exciting to see that even in this whole process that's facilitated in the home, that we could still achieve outcomes measures for hearing aids similar to, and on par with international scores and scores that we would achieve in first world countries. So the next, we moved over with our focus to Kenya. Sorry, I'm just still on the previous slide. And in Kenya, we started with our venture building support through the team. And I must say that that's been the highlight so far. We first dived into feasibility studies, and together with the ATIF team, we came up with 3 different models that could be paths to the market, and conducted studies for all 3 models. So one, we explored working with a pay-go solar company and to see how one could implement in that way. And the second one we explored was working with a pharmaceutical distribution company. And the third one, we tried to look at innovative ways of working through corporate partnerships to go to market. And our learnings has been great, and it really informed our decision making towards the end for operationalizing. We also had the great privilege of working with expert consultations. One that I particularly enjoyed was working on communications and marketing strategies that's contextualized for Kenya, and how we could adapt to the context. Another one was working on business and financial modeling to really see how we can strive for a sustainable model that can really bring sustainable change in this sector. And lastly, we were working with our expert team on operationalization and launch prep to get ready for testing our first component. And so in the feasibility studies, we learned a lot. For instance, one of the things we learned is that even though we wanted to go with a WhatsApp-based support program, we saw that the uptake of WhatsApp was still lower than expected. And many of our potential customers will still be using basic phones. So we would have to adapt in terms of facilitating via SMS, for instance. Other interesting factors was also learning about what our potential customers see as affordable, what they think hearing aids costs, and what they would be willing to put towards getting access to a hearing aid, for instance. We definitely saw that awareness is low, so we're going to have to work on that. Trust is a big issue. So in many of the questionnaires, we found that people still will have to deal with a level of trust. They're sometimes used to hearing aids being brought into a country, donated, and not well supported after that, and that we would have to address that. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So I'm very excited to share some of our key accomplishments to date with you. It's been a busy couple of months. So first of all, we managed to register the company in Kenya, which was a process in itself. And also one of our key learnings that when going to a new market, this should really be your first step in the first month. It can be a daunting process, but once again, that's where ATIF has been super helpful, having somebody support us in country, knowing who we could contact, and in that way we could get the final result. Another key accomplishment was our app that we built to be able to facilitate this process, specifically in Kenya, according to the model with all the learnings we've had. And then we've also managed to get a committed partner for the first launch and pilot that we will be running. I'll share a little bit more in the next screen about that. And then we've interviewed and spoken to 450 people in Kenya to really make sure we know our potential customers, what their needs are, and what also the risks are that we need to look out for. we've fitted 19 community members with hearing aids, and we're able to conduct all these studies that I shared with you a little bit. And then also one of our key accomplishments was this new support program that we developed for the model. Next up. So what's next for us? Moving into the final stretch. So we've been able to partner, very excited to share that we've been able to partner with Elara Health as our first strategy to go to market. And it's actually just a beautiful tale of two companies that actually they were looking for us and we were looking for them and found one another at the perfect time. And they've agreed to work with us for the first pilot to launch into 6 of their clinics in 2 locations within Kenya. And we are very excited to kick that off in December. And we will also be looking at M-Pesa integration to allow for monthly payments to really work on that affordability and on some creative financing options to make this affordable to the market. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was really, really interesting and fascinating just to hear around some of the, I think particularly some of the elements around the support that you've implemented and the challenges around that, and also what's been successful and how that's really kind of increased engagement, and the importance, I guess, of some of the work that has to be done in proximity to the actual AT itself to build the market within country to a specific audience within a particular environment to really open up the opportunities for scaling and engagement within that AT, and to ensure that people are using the product in the right way over a long period of time. And I think that's something that was really key around this program and around kind of that groundwork that's happening across quite a lot of the ventures we've heard from today, is around looking at those really specific local markets and some of the opportunities around that and targeting appropriately, because one of the different environments really suit a different approach. So that's fascinating to hear. And I think you've also in your presentation just highlighted some of the ways in which kind of Atif have supported HIREX, and we know it's really specific for each individual venture, and it really depends on the product and the markets that are being entered into and what's needed in those particular contexts. But I know there was a couple of questions that came through on the question and answer around that some of our fantastic panelists have already answered, but hopefully everyone's starting to get a bit of a bigger picture around the work that Atif are doing to support ventures in lots of different ways, just to really kind of catapult some of those kind of ATs getting into the communities and the markets they need to be in. So thank you so much. I'm going to now hand across. We are going to move to hear from Nate in Ewan. So I'll hand across to you to introduce yourselves and your venture.
Thanks very much. Hi, I'm Ewan. I'm the CEO of Koala, and I'm joined by Nate, you'll hear from shortly, who's both the founder and the chief designer. Also, dialed into the call, we've got Niall and Sanish from the Koala team who are out in Sierra Leone this week. Also, Dr. Abs Dambaya, who's been our key contact and partner down there. And without him, frankly, we would have struggled an awful lot. The other person without whom we would have found life very difficult is Assad from Brink on the Atif side, who's also on the call, I hope. Anyway, of the fact we've got 2 people in Sierra Leone, Nate was out there earlier on this year, and I haven't been. So you'll hear very little from me, because most of what I have to say isn't really, isn't all at second hand. So let's hear it from Nate, who's been doing a lot. Nate.
You can come next time, Ian. Yeah, so I'm Nate. And on the next slide, I thought it'd be more fun to talk about the people that we're working with. So this is Suleiman. So we met him in September. He lives in Sierra Leone. He's a keen footballer. He's a Manchester United supporter, so that's probably why I like him so much. But he's a dad, and he lives with limb loss. When we met him, we were quite surprised to know that he had never had a prosthetic limb. And these obviously to the question of why is that? And on the next slide, you'll see some of the problems. And there's actually a lot of common themes from the other talks. It's actually so cool to hear everyone, because that part of it's a product problem. Traditional prosthetics aren't designed for people living in Africa. They're not designed for local context. They look like things like this. They are, you know, rigid kind of devices with complicated things on the end. and they're very expensive, you know, ranging from many hundreds of pounds to many thousands of pounds. But aside from the products, there's a severe service problem. The prosthetic service relies a lot on clinics, brick and mortar clinics that you need to be close to get the support, and it relies a lot on very heavily trained clinicians. You add all this together, the price and the infrastructure, and it means that 90% of people who need a prosthetic limb around the world get absolutely nothing. So we're talking about 30 million people around the world that have no access to anything. So on the next slide, you'll see what we're trying to do. Very simply, we just want to build a sustainable solution to both of these problems for anyone, no matter where they are on the planet. And it comes in two parts. First, we've reinvented the prosthetic and looked at one that's more applicable for local situations. But importantly, this what takes a lot of work, is reimagining a service that actually makes sense in a place like Sierra Leone and beyond. So if we start with the prosthetic on the next slide, we've stopped looking at it like rigid medical devices and looked at it like other things that you wear. And this is purely inspired by people like Suleiman, who live with these limb differences. We looked like clothes. So we make prosthetics that are soft and flexible. I don't know if you can see my screen, but it's used fabric. It's built very much like a trainer. What that lets you do is make it much more cheaply. And also you're able to fit it very, very quickly and send it to people that are very far away in remote parts of the planet, which is really great. And what that leads to is an entirely new way of servicing. So on the next slide, you can see that instead of having a clinic and staffed with tens of heavily trained technicians, you can have all of that support and all of the ability to fit people with prosthetic limbs in a box, in a suitcase-sized box. This is amazing for people because you don't need to, you can do that in a clinic, but you can also chuck it in the back of a bike and go to where the users are if they're in a remote part of the world, remote part of the country. So you don't need expensive infrastructure, you don't need specialist personnel. You can have more of a peer-to-peer community looking after each other. So this all sounds very nice, but does it work? Well, this is what we've been doing with Atif. So on the next slide, you'll see what we did as an immediate step was just go and do it. We already started. So in September, we went out, Niall and I, who Niall loved it so much, he's back there. We went out for a week. We fitted 20 people across 5 different locations, and all we had was a suitcase full of these soft prosthetics and a pair of scissors and a bit of chalk so you could cut it to size. We went around meeting amazing people and proving that actually it doesn't take a lot to get this going. And while we were there, we were very careful. So on the next slide, you see, we want to be a force multiplier. So we're working with the local governments, we're working with the rehab centers, we're working with the Ministry of Health, and it's all supported by the Clinton Health Access Initiative to make sure that we're embedding within the system and not trying to come in as an outside savior trying to impose our will. It's very much listening to the people who work in this sector and who live with the differences, and letting them build the service and us just do what they tell us, essentially. So if you take to the next slide, you can see some of their kind of outcomes. We've been working with young children as young as 4 to 5. I think she's 5 now, and working with really skilled tradesmen. So that's him carving a really impressive sculpture with one of our sleeves, but just listening to them and listening to how they want to be looked after and how they want to work with prosthetics. I think I'll hand back to Ewan now just to take us through what this means and why we're so excited about it.
Thanks, Nate. Got the next slide, please. So what does this mean for us and what do we do next? We are working with the Ministry of Health of the Sierra Leonean government towards a plan for national rollout with full engagement for them. So a draft was passed to our team in Sierra Leone yesterday, which we're working through, but looks very exciting. We also believe strongly in evidence. Prosthetics in general, not just in Africa, has been a very, very understudied and under evidenced part of care. So we're very keen to build that up. So we're doing a study on all the people fitted to date and the ones we're fitting this week, and then the ones which we're leaving behind for people we trained in Sierra Leone to fit in the next couple of weeks with Chai, and that should give us a pretty substantial evidence base. But then we want to build on that as we go forward. So you've got something there to take, showing the benefits, but also around the economics to other countries in Africa. So that's all very much something that's scalable across Africa. What we're moving towards, though, I think is come out of the work with Atif strongly, is that we can do this and we can reach an awful lot of people for a relatively very small amounts of money. And we're moving towards this sort of what we call a flexible and blended funding model, the idea of various co-payers based on ability to pay. But in a country like Sierra Leone or anywhere in Africa, our goal is to be able to, for $100,000 a year, look after 1,300 people, as in provide them and support them with a prosthetic upper limb. That works out at about $1.50 per week per person. It is scalable. We think probably in Sierra Leone, maybe the users could fund $5,000 of that, maybe the government $25,000 of that. Whereas in other countries which are higher income, we think more of that could be picked up by the users and the local government. So that's exciting. We think it's got real potential, but that's part of the focus of the next round of work. And then finally, I think we always like to finish with the last slide, please. It's back to Suleiman. Here he is. So it's a relatively small investment, but it's a very big impact. It's a huge impact from him. I mean, he's able to participate more fully in bringing up his toddler, but he's also able to really, really go for it on the football pitch. And we know that means everything to him. Both of those things, vitally important. That's it. Thank you very much. That's from Koala.
Thank you so much for that. Brilliant to hear about the stories of some of the individuals that you've been working with, and just, I guess, the change it's making to people's lives, but then also the approach of completely looking to reinvent something and look at where the opportunities are to take something in a completely different, I guess, focus to enable access in some of these markets, and to give people the opportunity to at quite a low cost be able to have a prosthetic that they just wouldn't have had before. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see where this journey takes us, and to see what the opportunities are and what some of these trials will move forward, and just the opportunities. And I think what really struck me as you were talking about going out and doing some of these fits and trying out the products with people in the communities, is going out with a suitcase. My brother, in fact, is an amputee, so it's a world I'm quite familiar with, and the concept of being able to, with very little resource, be able to provide prosthetics is really quite an exciting one. So I think it'll be fascinating to see how this journey progresses, and we look forward to hearing more. So we are now going to hand across to the fantastic OADP CPH, get that right, who'll be telling us a little bit more about their work and their distribution opportunities.
Hello, good afternoon from Togo. We are very excited and happy to be here today. And thanks to all those who presented before us. And thank you for this opportunity that you are giving us. A very unique organization in Africa, in charge of all the things that are related to assistive technology products. And from people who presented before us, there were about people who were in charge of upper limb prosthetics, lower limb orthotics, and many other things. And OADCPH not just specialized in one of those assistive technologies, but OADCPH comes like aggregating all the issues related to prosthetics and orthotics and mobility and assistive technology on the continents. And what we are, our focus and our stress, and all the time we are striving all our effort in every day that we are working is in order to get all across the continent low-cost assistive technology distribution and logistics in Africa. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Sorry, Anurami, you're breaking up a little bit. I'm not sure which slide you want. Do you want the one with the graphic or the huge challenge slide?
I think we've lost connection somewhat there. So what we'll maybe do is we'll give it a couple of minutes and we'll try and come back to Anne-Marie and see if we can hear a bit more about that. So what we'll maybe do is move on to the next part of the agenda, and we'll try and reconnect slightly later on and see if we can catch back up on that story. So what it would be a real pleasure to do now is hear from Lee, who's just going to be able to give a bit more of a wider perspective on the Atif program and some of those learnings that have come through. And I think they've come through really clearly on some of these presentations from the individual ventures, but also will help be able to position in terms of what the program is, because it is so varied and it does mean a lot of different things for different ventures depending on their AT and where they're up to in the development phases as well. So I'll hand across to Lee just to talk through a little bit around.
Super, thank you, Louise. And let's hope Anurami and the OADCPH team get their connection stabilized so that you can hear from them. I hope you all feel the same way that the Brink team, the Catalyst team, and everyone working on Atif gets to feel every day, just kind of in awe of the amount of progress and goodwill and energy that is coming through from the grantees and the amazing progress that they're making. I guess it's our job as a fund to work with the individual grantees, but to also think about what are the patterns, what are the trends that we're seeing across the board, and in a way, what is it all adding up to, so that we can improve as a fund and so that each of the grantees can benefit from one another's lessons too. We will send a very short paper that has these kind of 6 emerging insights out to everyone who's in attendance today. But I'll maybe touch on some of the kind of key emerging themes that are coming out for us. And hopefully they'll resonate for those of you in attendance. So firstly, you know, it's really interesting to work with grantees in a relatively nascent sector, which AT is. And we've noticed across the board that a lot of the work we're doing with our grantees comes with what we're starting to refer to as the innovator burden. So when you're in a relatively immature sector, the burden is on the innovator to think about its enabling environment as well as the product entering an environment. So for instance, and you've heard from some of the grantees talk about this already, you know, figuring out the distribution channels, the full service model, working with others on the ground. Really, they have to do the end-to-end bit, you know, entirely on their own backs. And of course, what we've seen is the kind of counter bit of evidence to that, and through the likes of Koala and others, where they've gone into a relatively enabling environment, the progress has been far swifter. So where work is already, or great pathways and progress has already been laid down by folks like Chai, and where there's already good traction with country governments, for example, in Sierra Leone, progress has of course been easier to make. And we are seeing across the board a lot of what we like to call the invisible innovation, right? So you've seen all of the products that these grantees are working on. They're all impressive. They're all interesting in their own way, but kind of behind the scenes, in the sinews of how those products get to market is innovation and business models and scaling pathways and other things. And we're very proud to say that even though we have quite a small cohort of grantees, we're seeing business models being pioneered for the sector. And just in our small cohort, we have a range of business models, including pay-as-you-go, the matrix or blended type finance that you heard Ewan mention just a moment ago, cross-subsidies, memberships, and other things. So really, really interesting thing about business models, some of which have never been trialed in AT before. When it comes to scaling pathways, it's a little bit more predictable across this group. We're seeing 2 main scaling pathways. One is through government in Sierra Leone, and the other is relatively organic growth, but with real kind of step changes brought into the fold through strategic partnerships, which has already been come across quite a lot, and also through grant investment and the kinds of capital and support that's been offered through Atif and through others. And we really think like that those kinds of step changes can add oomph to what might have otherwise been a kind of incremental organic journey, which we're seeing across our grantees. And we've heard from a couple of the grantees today about entering new markets are difficult. That's not new news to anyone, but what is new news is the way that our grantees have been ingenious and kind of hacking the system and getting around some of those challenges and some of those blockers. I'm pleased to say that we'll be publishing a playbook for entering new markets, because 4 of our 5 grantees have done that, and a lot of them have learned similar lessons. And some of those lessons are, you know, are simple, are deceptively simple, but very useful. Like, you know, be mindful of election cycles when you're entering a new market, and things like, you know, the user experience of government portals and so on might not be up to standard. So they might give you a kind of false sense of what is needed. And then once you're a certain way down the track, you might realize there's a whole bunch more that's needed. So we'll be publishing that playbook, which will hopefully serve as a global good for the sector. We're also trialing new and novel payment solutions, so flexible payment facilities, subscriptions, interesting experiments to see whether subscriptions to products actually combat abandonment from users, and pay as you go. And then the final point that I'll make very, very briefly is this idea of the cuspers. So we have been very mindful of and keen to reach the most poor populations, those who are typically underrepresented in programs like these. And those who aren't often served by commercial models. And we knew that by supporting our grantees and just simply expecting trickle down to get to the bottom of the pyramid wouldn't happen. So we're mindfully designing for and creating business models that extend reach into the more poor potential users of products, increasingly through what we're calling the cuspers. So those are those who kind of sit on the cusp of being bottom of the pyramid and being able to afford and access solutions. And we'll share all of these points and more in a paper in the coming 24 hours or so. Over to you, Louise.
Thank you, Lee. And I think it's also a good point just to mention here that this is the first webinar in a series that we're doing on this work. As you can probably tell, there's a lot happening and there's lots of different stories to drill down into and research and learning and understanding. So we'll be sending around some more information about all those upcoming webinars after the session as well. So please do sign up to those if you're interested in hearing more detail on all these different elements. But let's try again and hear from OADCPH. Let's have a go.
Thank you very much. I'm very sorry for these connection issues. So I was saying that OADCPH, which is the African Organization for the Development of Centers for People with Disability. So it came in when there was a huge issue on the continent regarding access to assistive technology products. Could we go to the next slide, please? There was a huge challenge in Africa regarding access to assistive technology products, as I was saying. So many things, and here we have a summary of some of the challenges that we have on the continent regarding access to assistive technology products. The first thing is the products, the price of the products are very high, and added to the price of the product is the custom and clearance hassles. The second thing is the lack of knowledge of potential suppliers. So in this assistive technology, you have many thousands of suppliers, and each supplier is offering a different technology. So whenever you are in the field, you are a professional and you don't know what are the different suppliers existing, you may just know one or two, and you will continue offering the services and the technology of just one or two to the population, and the quality of the service may not follow. So there is this lack of knowledge of range of possibility of treatment and possibility to the people with disabilities. The third thing that we came across is about finances. In some countries in Africa, the money is there, but because of national policies, so they wait to deliver the products before they get paid. But many suppliers in the world do not accept deliver the product before being paid. So they want to be paid upfront before deliver the products. And because of that, many countries are not able to get access to those assistive technology products, although the money is there. And some of at times they don't have the money, but they would like to pay by installments, and the suppliers do not agree with such things. And because of that, there were this lack of access to the AT products on the continent. And then there was also a limited access to continuous professional development. And when there is no continuous professional development, people will they will not maintain their skills. Their competence will be very low. There will be no updates, and the quality of services will not follow. So there will be an issue with the lack of quality of services, and then patient satisfaction will also be very low. It was at this time that OADCPH came in to fill the gap and to serve and to perform action that could solve all these challenges that we have just talked about. Next slide, please. But despite the goodwill of OADCPH and all the good works OADCPH has been done, there were still limitations to be addressed. Limitations like being closer to the members, because when a member, for instance, is far away from OADCPH, this will involve high transportation costs. So there was limitation about the transportation cost, because when OADCPH, for instance, ships a material, we are based in West Africa. When OADCPH ships components to East Africa, so there is a very long distance, and this also increased the and other related expensive. And there was also issue in the work we were doing with the clients, because most of the time we are working with clients via email. Whenever a client wants something, we send what type do you want, what length do you want, what volume do you want, and it was a lot of going and coming with a lot of emails, and it was making the work very high and very huge. And it was at this point that Assistive Technology Impact Fund came in, and it was the right time, it was timely, and within 5 months of collaboration, a lot has happened. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And since 2011, when we started, so we started very little. The previous slide, please. Thank you. And when we started in a very little way, but by the years growing and coming, and we have been able to grow over, and then we have today all the blue spaces that are covered in Africa. We have been able to ship product to all those different parts of Africa. So this really expresses the really need that we had in the continent. We are based in Togo in East Africa, but people are in need of the products all over the continent. And we have been able to assist all those countries in shipping products to them. But the issue, as I mentioned before, is just imagine sending products from Togo to East Africa. It will be a huge investment in transportation cost. Sending products from Togo to South Africa, it will be very huge in transportation costs. So the issue now is being closer to our customers all over the continent. Next slide, please. And with the work with the assistance of Assistive Technology Impact Fund, we have been working since these 5 months to establish a hub in East Africa, especially in Kenya, undertaking a user research with customer, and then number 3 now, to prototype a testing and digital platform. And as I said before, we have been working manually. A lot of things have been going by email, by a lot of phone calls and everything, but a digitized way of doing work will really assist the AT sector in the continent. Next slide, please. What we have learned so far with the work we have been doing with Assistive Technology Impact Fund, entering East Africa as an NGO is very hard with a lot of challenges. We conducted a fact-finding and exploration mission in Kenya, and we met a lot of stakeholders, met a lot of people in the NGO sectors, and it was very hard because there were different points of view and opinion from people working in the NGO registering sector, from people working there. There were different points of view. So it was difficult for us to know really what will be the exact point of view that will be really helpful for us. That's the first thing that we we had as a challenge. The second thing, where there were different options to register as an NGO. So there was no clear point of which one would be the real effective one, appropriate to what we are doing, and which will assist us to keep our prices still as low as we used to do in Togo here. Because it's because of a lot of things that we are able to offer low-cost technology to all over continent. But when you get to a country where things are hard and difficult, so this will have a negative impact, and then the cost may be more expensive than we plan to do. So it was really an issue to us to be solved, so that we keep it as low as it uses to be. And we are told that there was a lot of hurdles that were put in place by the government because of security. And then we noticed that in that place where we want to establish the hub, the hiring space were expensive, and when it's expensive, that means someone has to pay for it, and that means the end users now will definitely have more expensive products. And then there was also an issue with the time it takes to register an NGO in East Africa, especially in Kenya. That is where, with all these findings that we had, we have to shift to another way of establishing OADCPH in East Africa, which is about going through a local partnership. And we have we have been fortunate to meet with the Association of Physically Disabled of Kenya, which is also involved in assistive technology all over Kenya in East African region for over 60 years now, and which have the knowledge of doing the work, and which are renowned of what they have been doing. Next slide, please. And here it is. So we have to shift to local partnership. That means OADCPH now from West Africa going now to East Africa is not going to by standing alone, paying for a space, having its own staff, because this will increase the operation costs. And when the operation costs are increased, so it will generate and revert into the prices of the product. So here with this local partnership with the Association of the Physically Disabled of Kenya, the space is there already. They are ready to assist us in doing whatever we are doing. They are ready to give us staff to assist us in whatever we are doing, and to serve as a warehouse for the components. And this will allow us to still maintain our cost and our products as a very low cost. Next slide, please. And a user research was also conducted with the assistance of the Assistive Technology Impact Fund, a very nice team that was working with us, and then a lot of feedback were collected, and then from the improvements of the offer. And from the beginning of OADCPH, we have been manual, and now with the assistance and with this active work that we have been doing, we are going digital. And then a digitized platform was needed and is now created. Next slide, please. So it was initially intended for external use. That means we have all the products registered on the platform. Whenever a client wants to get something, wherever he is in the continent, he only have to get on the platform and look at the products he wants, look at the different characteristics of the product he wants, look at the price of the product, get instantaneous invoice, and have an idea of a clear idea of what he or she or they are looking for. Because most of the time people have limited budget. Let me give an example. They have $2,000 for purchase, and then they want to have a food, prosthetic food. They have to have the prosthetic hand. They have to have a polypropylene. They have to, and they don't know how much all these things come. They send a lot of articles, and then their money is not able to carry all those things. Now, with this digitized platform, all the information, and then whatever their budget, whatever their need, everything will be just there clear, and then they'll be able to make their own cart, and then be able to find out really what they are looking for. And this is some of the screenshot of the platform that we have. We have an interaction, very nice interaction between logistics, between procurement, between human resources, between accountability, generating of invoice. Everything become now detailed, and it makes the work easy internally, and also make the purchase and the consultation of article very easy for our customers. So it started internally, but we have noticed that it was very useful both internally and externally. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much for that.
The last slide. Oh,
the last slide. Okay, if you can quickly whiz through the last slide, we're getting a little short on time, and then we'll move into some conclusions. Thank you.
And we are confident that all this things will bring OADCPH forwards, and if OADCPH goes forward, it will bring about the growth of assistive technology sector in the whole continent. And we are confident with the assistance of the nice team of Atif that is working with us, that will be able to achieve a lot. And with these local partnerships that have started, we believe that it will be also sustainable. And from all the teams that are here today, the big team that is here today, the 100 people that were here today, we believe that from with your support, a lot of team will be done to assist Assistive technology in the continent. Thank you very much, and very sorry for these internet connection issues.
That's no problem at all. It's brilliant to hear about all the amazing work and the scale and the areas that you're covering. So it's fantastic to hear about about how you're kind of taking AT to all the different areas and some of those challenges that you're working so hard to overcome as well. So it's a brilliant, I guess, reflection on AT across the whole continent and the space that we're trying to fill. So we're now going to come to Anne from SCDO, just talk a little bit more around kind of the Atif project as a whole and how that fits into some of the other wider work from UK aid to really focus on getting assistive technology to those that most need it, but to doing quite a kind of, I guess, an innovative new approach to that process.
Thanks, Louise. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly, thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Anne McKinnon, and I work for the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, or FCDO, in the UK. Part of my role is to manage the AT 2030 programme, the wider programme within which the AT Impact Fund sits. So thanks very much to all the presenters today. It's been great hearing about the work that you've done so far, for sharing your experiences, and it's clear that you've done an absolutely huge amount of work. So thank you for sharing that, and incredibly well done from us. Globally, we're seeing the impact of a rapidly changing science and technology landscape. Science and technology are undeniably a force for immense good, and I think that as the AT Impact Fund shows, we need to be able to both harness the advantages and mitigate any risks that new innovations and new markets present. Earlier this year, the UK government published the Integrated Review, which sets out the UK government's ambitious vision for the 21st century. This vision depends on and mutually reinforces a strong and varied network of international science and technology partnerships. We know that the best way to tackle global and national challenges is by making use of the opportunities that international collaboration affords. And we heard from Wazi, Vision, Lee, and from others this afternoon just how important that is. And as part of the UK's vision and ambition, we must ensure that nobody is left behind. People with disabilities are among the poorest and most disadvantaged in our society. To create solutions for people with disabilities, we need to involve them at the heart of the process from design and testing onwards. This is a fundamental part of the AT Impact Fund and ensures that products are relevant, that they'll be used, and that they can scale, reaching those who need them the most. Although assistive technology is a nascent sector, programmes such as AT 2030's Innovate Now, alongside the AT Impact Fund, have opened up the landscape for private sector investment. And as we've heard today, and I'm sure we'll hear more over the next 3 sessions, the team have been building the AT ecosystem, one that will continue to grow as we apply our learning and lock-in investment to enable our partnerships to reach scale. Investment in assistive technology in Africa has the potential to offer a significant return on investment. We're currently proving and improving our models to support innovations and businesses to scale. Thanks very much. Back to you, Louise.
Thank you, Anne. It's really interesting just to hear that bigger picture, but also just I think we're all really privileged to work on such an exciting and dynamic project. And I think just some of the learnings and the opportunities that have already opened up as a result of Atif, particularly, I guess, the ventures working together and working collaboratively and all the different partners that are involved, and the learnings that we've had from that, I think is an amazing point for us all to move on from here and to, I guess, really take this to the next stage. So I'm now going to hand across to Louisa, who's actually going to pull on a bit of that and just talk a little bit more around some of the more research findings from this work. And I know that we're kind of coming towards the end of the session, so in case people are having to also leave. Just to give you a bit of an update, that this is the first, as was mentioned, of 4 sessions. We have another 3 to go, and in those future sessions we'll be focusing on investment, and we will also be focusing around that investment, the opportunity and the scale, and how people and funders and individuals and businesses can get involved in this. But we'll also be hearing a lot more from the actual the ventures themselves in a full showcase next year. So if you want to hear more detail on that, do keep in touch with us, and we'll share that all. So I'll hand across to Louisa now, just to hear a few of the conclusions from a research perspective.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this really brief because I know that we're out of time. But I do want to reflect not so much on the research I've been doing, but a lot on what we've heard about today, which is very consistent with the research that I've been doing. And I'm just going to hone in to one area here, if we can actually go on to the next slide. What I want to really hone in on is how the AT ecosystem is changing. And it's changing at a rate that we have never seen before in the sector. Anne just talked about this. She said that there's been a rapidly changing landscape. And what this is creating, and we have seen it today from everybody that spoke today, is people have a trust and a confidence in the ecosystem that has never before been seen in our AT sector. This for me is incredibly exciting. And the reason it's so exciting is that other sectors that have this trust and confidence that has increased at a rapid rate sees an explosion of growth. There's lots of reasons that the trust and the confidence is changing. And in the research we're doing, I'm going to be able to provide you with quotes and data that substantiate this finding and this reflection that I have. But I do want to go back to Cheska from Miracle Feet. She started out her presentation today by saying that when she started out, she was the only person in town doing what she was doing. And now she feels that she has a community of people around her. I'm so proud to be part of Atif because I feel that that's what Atif has done. Yes, they've done the venture building, and yes, there's been investment capital, and all of these things are very, very important, as has been identified today. But at the heart of what Atif is doing, and the sector more widely, is we are creating a sense of community. We are giving trust to the people. The end users are starting to trust that the devices that they're going to get are going to be appropriate, they're going to be usable, and they're going to come with this end-to-end chain of service to make sure that any problems and troubleshooting and repairs that they need can be done. And for the first time in my 25 years of working in the AT sector, I'm incredibly proud of what we as a community are doing right now. And that is my reflection for today. Thank you for being here, everybody.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Louisa. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretty much draw the session to a close there. So a huge thank you to everybody that's joined. I know you're joining from all over the world, from a huge number of different organizations, from different backgrounds, and lots of different types of interest within this space as well. So we'd be really interested to hear any of your reflections that you may have. So do get in contact with us at the GDI Hub. And a huge thank you to everyone that's presented today, and of course the captioner and the International Sign Language. We really hope that you'll be kind of able to join us on some of our following webinars to find out a little bit more about the detail of some of this area. Our next webinar is going to be on the 8th of December, and that one will be really focusing on the investment opportunity. So that will be getting to some of the nitty-gritty of what the opportunity are with this market and how we can take some of these learnings and scale up. I know there's also been quite a few questions around recording of the session, so this will be pre-recorded, and it will be available along with a transcript afterwards. We haven't had the opportunity to come to some of your questions today, but actually they've all been answered by our fantastic panelists, and also a lot of them have been drawn out and been responded to during the session itself. So I hope you've got some of your answers, but as I said, there's another few sessions you can join to find out any more you should wish to. So a huge thank you for everyone for taking the time to join today, and we hope you'll join us next time.